It's now welcome SABC News Correspondent Nick Harper, who joins us live from Canada. Nick, it's good to have you with us this afternoon. Welcome. So maybe just take us through some of the expected discussions at this G7 Outreach Summit. And more importantly, will Trump be in attendance this time after having had that meltdown and walking out back in 2018? And of course, his recent comments about Canada's Prime Minister Mark Carney about, of course, Canada becoming the 51st state of the United States.
Good afternoon, Alicia. Yeah, so much to unpack. Potentially this could be a high-stakes summit for all of the leaders involved. Rewinding back to that 2018 summit that you mentioned, Donald Trump left that one early. It was the last summit that was held in Canada. At that time, it was in Ottawa. And he decided that he was not going to sign on to the joint communique that all of the other countries put out at the end of the summit. Also, tweeting on social media afterwards some nasty comments about the then Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. The hope is that Donald Trump won't torpedo things this time around. I'm joining you from Calgary, just a short way away from Kananaskis. This is where many of the world leaders are beginning to arrive. Donald Trump is expected here late tonight, and it'll be from here that they will make their way to that small Rocky Mountain town that is in the distance behind me. There are many things going on around the world, many problems that the world leaders will have to deal with. But of course, central to that will be this idea of trying to find some unity at a time when they know Donald Trump views the G7 and these multilateral summits really with disdain. He does not like attending these type of things. He much prefers bilateral negotiations as opposed to multilateral consensus building. So trying to get him on side during the course of this summit, trying to get to find some common ground that all the leaders can agree on will undoubtedly be difficult. And plenty of issues around the world that they will have to confront, but also issues dealing with economies. Normally the G7 would be looking to try and work out how to help other economies, developing nations around the world, but central to the discussions will be trying to work out the differences when it comes to trade between themselves, because Donald Trump started the trade war imposing tariffs against all of the other G7 nations and the extended countries, including South Africa, who are invited. So central to their discussions will be trying to overcome their differences before they can move on to really trying to solve some of the problems they're facing.
Absolutely. And speaking of South Africa, Nick, of course, our inclusion in the summit actually symbolizes and in fact highlights its significance as a leading voice here in Africa's energy sector, as we are currently also grappling with energy security related issues. So this will be a perfect platform to actually harness and tap into available collaborative energy efforts as we transition also to cleaner energy as well. So this will be quite a fluid environment for securing possible partnerships as well.
Well, that's certainly the hope. I think what we've seen with the G7 during the last 50 years that it's been in existence is a realization that it doesn't really reflect the world as it is today. It is a grouping of the 7 richest nations. It represents about 44% of global GDP, but only 10% of the world's population. And that's why we've seen in recent years an outreach to other countries to bring them to the table, to give them the opportunity to be involved in discussions as well. And there is that hope from many of the countries, including South Africa, who will be here, that they will have that opportunity to carry out bilateral discussions with other countries about some of those important issues. Mark Carney, the Prime Minister of Canada, put together that wish list of things that he would like to discuss. And amongst those, as you mentioned, energy security is in there. Also, digital transformation, AI, how to deal with better infrastructure building in the world going forward. Those are the type of things that South Africa will be participating in to try and find some consensus with the other countries who've been invited, but also the G7 nations. And of course, let's not forget, there will perhaps be an opportunity for another meeting between Cyril Ramaphosa and Donald Trump following that Oval Office meeting a couple of months ago, a very contentious meeting where we saw the US leader accusing the South African president of carrying out white genocide back in South Africa. It was a difficult meeting for the two men. It'll be unclear if they meet during this week's summit. If they do, I guess they'll be trying to get that relationship on a surer footing after how we saw it end at the Oval Office a couple of months ago.
Nick, and I was just about to say, I mean, this actually comes at the back of that meeting where a lot of opinions were that, it was a great resetting of South Africa-US relations. But surely, Nick, this summit will make for quite intense discussion unilaterally. I mean, you touched on it a bit earlier on. I mean, as I suppose the current unfolding crisis in the Middle East should also be featuring quite prominently on the discussions as well. And looking at the guest list there, Ukraine is also going to be there, and there's also that ongoing tensions between Ukraine and Russia.
Well, exactly. Aside from trade, the thinking was that Ukraine would be at the top of the priority list when it came to global conflicts. However, what we've seen unfolding in the Middle East between Israel and Iran over the last few days, I think means that the G7 will have to pivot towards that conflict. That will now become front and center. Volodymyr Zelensky will be here. There will be discussions about Ukraine, but in many ways, he perhaps will now be playing second fiddle to that unfolding situation in the Middle East. And there may be some very difficult questions that Donald Trump will be asked by the other G7 countries. Simply put, why he has not managed to tame Iran over the last few weeks. He's been pushing very hard to do a deal that would see them reduce their uranium enrichment, reduce their nuclear program in return for sanctions relief. Obviously, that has not worked, and there will be questions to Donald Trump as to why it has not worked, but also going forward, how he plans to rein in Benjamin Netanyahu and his continued attacks against Iran. It will be very difficult to try and work out and find consensus there. And just quickly on Ukraine, there had been some hope that they would be looking for a way to reduce the amount of money that Russia gets from selling oil around the world, trying to put a cap on prices. It's currently set at $60 a barrel. There was a hope that they could reduce it to $45 a barrel, but because of the flare-up in the Middle East, that has pushed oil prices up. It has made questions about whether the supply of oil will be readily available in the coming weeks because of the unfolding situation in Iran, and that may make it harder to find consensus on that issue of oil, and therefore we could see problems when it comes to, again, finding common ground on a way forward for the conflict in Ukraine.
A very comprehensive update there. Thank you so much to Nick Harper, the SABC News correspondent in Canada for us, as of course the G7 convenes for an outreach summit.